And welcome to Impact 2025, our continuing conversation where we talk about everything from current events, so we talk about race, we talk about religion, we talk about everything that's going on. And this is that opportunity where you can join us in conversation. And so this is also that safe space where you can join us in conversation. And so welcome to Impact 2025. Uh, we hop right in. We go at a high speed or uh, a high pace. But before we jump in, we always want to remind people of our other offerings that we have here at Anointed Christian Ministries. On Tuesdays, that's today, right before here at 7 o'clock, we have a time of prayer from 7 to 7:45. We ask people to come and they pray with us. Everybody in the ministry is praying. So your prayers will be added to them as well. You pray where you are, at home, wherever you are personally, and you put up your prayers. And you'll be praying with everyone else in the ministry from 7 to 7:45. Not the whole time, but whatever time in between there, you will be praying with us. Then we have on Thursdays, Thursday Thirst, our weekly Bible study. This is a really good Bible study and the opportunity to be able to go through the Bible and get a deeper insight into what you need to know or what is being explained in the Bible. You can read it yourself, but it's better to come to a Bible study because you're not going to understand everything about the Bible unless you get with someone, a pastor, who is explaining to you what's going on. We have our own thoughts, and some of them could be right, some of them could be wrong. So we all need to come in for Bible study. And then on Sunday at 10 o'clock Eastern Standard Time here at Facebook, YouTube, just like all the other offerings, we have worship service, and that's at 10 o'clock. Again, and that's also in person. So if you are at the address, but on the screen, please feel free to come and join us. And so those are the offerings that I wanted to just put forth. Make sure you know what's going on, the type of things that we have going on. Also want to remind you that you can type your questions and your comments into the comments section. That is being a part of the conversation. So feel free to type in your questions, to let it be known how you feel. And then, we keep the conversation going. All right. There's been a lot of stuff going on. First and foremost, I do want to point out the fact that the Pope passed away. At 88 years old, the Pope just passed away on, I want to say, Monday, the day after Easter. Well, that's when it was reported that the Pope passed away. And so there are a lot of people, especially the Catholic community, who are in I guess mourning is the right word to say. It's kind of, 88, that's had a very good run. That's easy for me to say because I'm not 88 or didn't have my run in yet. But I think at that age, you had a very good run. You were the Pope. You had a lot of good stuff. So it's more of a celebratory thing in life, I think, versus sitting back and being sad. So I just want to make that acknowledgement. Unfortunately, we go into that time of where it's going to be a lot of politicking and playing around, where they're going to have to figure out and find a new pope. There are some American cardinals who are in the running. That's interesting. That's interesting because I know we have some American cardinals who probably need to come a little bit closer to the Lord. They've kind of, they're political cardinals instead of being religious. And so that's an interesting point. All right. But before all that, let's get to where we're going to get to. Unfortunately, this is a common theme here because there's just so much going on in the world of Washington and everything like that, that we're going to kind of talk about that again today. And what we're going to talk about is a similar theme of what we've talked about before. And that's basically people try to run everything like a business. People want to run their business like a business. That seems like a good idea. Some people want to run their house like a business. I don't know how that works. Some people want to run the church like a business. Terrible idea. And people want to run the government like a business. And so if you don't know, what happened today is the head of the State Department, Secretary of the State Department, decided that they was going to do a reorganization. And this reorganization was to cut away, in quotes, the bloated part of the State Department. And what the State Department has decided to do was to get rid of a number of different diplomats, close over 137 offices, transfer some other offices. And one of the thought and the reason behind it, other than that claim of being bloated, was that and I'm gonna explain it similar to the words that were used, but they don't quote me on that because these are not the exact words of the exact language. I'm explaining in a way that I think makes it more explainable or sound better. But the explanation that was given was that over the last 15 years, the department has expanded to the point where we have reached and we're touching so many different things in so many different countries and so many different populations. And even though we're touching all of these different populations, we're not getting our return on investment, business term, from doing these such actions. And so as a result, we're going to cut these particular offices. We're going to get rid of so many diplomats because our diplomatic goals are not producing the results or the return on investment that we want. And that be very clear. The word used was return on investment. And so here's what we're cutting. We're going to cut the world, when we're talking about world crimes, war crimes division, civil or civil liberty, civil rights, the rights of people. So the offices that are looking towards war crimes, the offices that are looking towards rights, those are what we're closing. Ironically, there is, or maybe unironically, a large portion of the offices that will be closed are throughout Africa. Now, they don't know exactly which offices are closing, or they do, but the reports are that almost every diplomatic office in Africa will be closed. Okay. Now we can talk about the race issue. It's open and shut. You should already know what's going on with the administration and everything like that. But again, is what I'm talking about is from, I guess, of the standpoint of why do we feel about ROI? When you're talking about war crimes, when you're talking about having your the State Department, the diplomats, if you don't know what the State Department is, that's the diplomatic arm of the United States who we're talking about abroad. And so we're talking about our defenses. You have your military might. But many people will say the strongest part of a country is their diplomacy, their ability to talk with others, their ability to negotiate with others, not through military means, but through other types of means to bring peace throughout the world. And that was the idea, is that the State Department should be everywhere in everything. You shouldn't be able to go anywhere in the world and the U.S. doesn't have some kind of touch point there, some kind of connection there. Because it not only keeps us safe here, but it keeps everyone safe by having someone that's reasonable and rational that can come in and say, hey, look, one, we're about democracy, two, we're about peace and civil rights. Everybody having a basic level of rights. And so by pulling away the division that is supposed to stop war crimes and evaluate situations like that, now we're saying, all right, you do it out. And so I don't know what return on investment we're supposed to be getting. But I do know that when you start using words like ROI or return on investment, you're starting to get into a business mode. And you're looking for a return, some kind of return. And there's usually going to be some kind of substantial, tangible return that you can touch, feel, see. And when you're looking at it like that, and when you're talking about other people, you're not going to always be able to get a return that you can touch and see and feel. And so I think this mindset, and I hear it a lot with younger people who will be like, hey man, I'm about my business. I'm about my money. I'm about my business. We need to run everything like a business. You got to do this. You got to do that. When you start to do that, you get away from the human touch. Granted, if they want to talk numbers and dollars when you're saying, well, we're sending all these diplomats out and they're talking all of these different countries and different people, and you're looking for a return on investment, I don't know what it's going to be. If you're looking for money to come back, that doesn't make any sense. If you're looking for stability across the world, well, that makes a little bit of sense. Even when you're looking at situations where there is no stability, you still want to be able to have a touch point and be involved and help all the people that you can. But for some reason, I think that I think that we've gotten that some people have gotten into this mindset of business. We need to have return on investments, and so as a result, our diplomatic arms, especially in Africa, will be removed because there's no tangible return that people can see. And then you have to look at, well, how many people are going to be harmed? Possibly. How many situations and scenarios where countries may have been going through some drama, some turmoil, and the United States and their diplomats were able to help kind of keep it calm, or was able to provide some resources in order that it wouldn't be a crisis situation. Or in some places where the crisis is already bad, that it won't get worse and turn into a humanitarian crisis, a large humanitarian crisis where people will die, where people will be displaced, where war and violence will break out. There is no really return on that. There's no return on that kind of investment that you can tangibly see. You can't really walk into a place and say, hey, look at all of this war I stopped. You could kind of say all the people that you help, but if you help them in a way that's not, I didn't put these meals out here, but I had a conversation with these groups and this group, and I said, hey, look here, we can't have you battling each other because things are going to happen. Whatever method of diplomacy that was put out, you can't always add it up into numbers and dollars, or you can't always add it up into quantifiable numbers. When you can't always just say, well, I helped 5,000 people today. Sometimes you just throw some stuff out there, throw some seeds out there and see what grows. And so I think it's really unfortunate that people can't see that. But I think more importantly, as the church and as people, especially when we're starting to talk to the next generations, or the next generations that are coming through, and the younger people that are coming through, a conversation of business is for business, and that is it. Nothing else runs like a business. We talk about the family one. I don't know. There's people who out there, they swear they run their family like a business. I think that's a foolish idea. You run a family like a family. You run a church like a church, and you run a business like a business, and you run a government like a government. If I sat back here, I have a dog. We've had a dog for about maybe 5 months now, maybe 6 months. Now, if I sat out here and I acted like, all right, we also have a hamster. I'm gonna treat the dog like we treat the hamster. The hamster stays in the cage all day. The hamster drinks from like this little thing that comes out of the cage, and he puts his mouth up to it and drinks like that. The hamster, you put food out there and it eats, and it has a wheel that it runs on at night. And it's a nocturnal animal, so it doesn't up during the day, it's up during the night. Now, if I treated the dog like that, the dog can't drink out of the thing that comes out. The dog has to drink out of a bowl. The dog is not nocturnal. At night, the dog is asleep. The dog doesn't run on the wheel. He needs to go outside and take a walk. So if I treated the dog like a hamster, the dog would probably not do too well. But I need to be smart enough to know what I'm dealing with. And for some reason, I think that this younger group, or even the older group, because the person who put this into play, Marco Rubio, he's not young. He's older than I, so he's not a young man. So he knows better, I think. But this idea that everything needs to be in a business, everything needs to be about dollars and cents, that everything needs to be about some kind of tangible return on investment, I think is a foolish notion, and we need to make sure that we explain that to younger people. Everything does not yield you results and returns in money. And I'm pull this comment up, but I'm gonna say one more thing before we get there. We also have this tariff thing going on, and I think it's a lack of understanding. It's the foolishness, I would say, of people in charge that don't understand that tariffs are not always, again, about money. Whether you're tariffing another country or not tariffing another country. And they're talking about, all these other countries are taking advantage of us, and this is going on and that's going on. It needs to be fair. We need to have zero trade and free trade. That's not how things work. Sometimes you don't need to tariff a country because, one, they don't have anything. Or you don't tariff a country because the deal or the goodwill that is worked out through the tariffs of not having tariffs, through the relationships, through the different business relationships. You have different business relationships with different people. And so I can tell you now, there are friends of mine who I know who aren't doing great financially at one particular point, at one particular time. We'll go out to eat, we'll go hang out, we'll go do whatever. And I'll pick up the bill. Now, because right now, at that moment, I was doing financially okay, whereas they may have been trouble. And so I'm not going to sit back and say, well, the next time you're going to have to pick up the bill. Or this is not a fair relationship because you don't never pick up the bill, because I'm always picking up the bill. Well, to who's given much, there's much more required. The relationship that is built there is we continue our friendship, but I don't need to be picking up the bill if I know that you can't handle it right now. And that's what's going on with this country versus other countries. If we're supposed to be the great country, the big country, and all of this kind of stuff, we need to understand that there's some situations that don't need to be fair. We got more. We have enough. We have an excess. And so we should pick up the bill. And there should not be a situation where we're expecting, well, one day you're going to have to pick up the bill. No, hopefully you'll never have to pick up the bill because I'm doing great and I'm going to continue to do great. And here's the thing. When I need something different that is not money, you may be there for me. And that's what we don't understand when it comes to tariffs. And that's what we don't understand when it comes to relationships. And that's what we don't understand when it comes to the State Department. All right. Sorry. Now we're going to go to some comments. The scripture teaches to whom much, well, it's right there. Too much is given, much is required. If America wants to be great, it must give much. That's absolutely. That's what it is. And that's the concept that I think people aren't getting. And there's still people who, when you look at the polls, who knows? But you got people who still get on board and they're saying, yeah, look at that. Why do we always give money to other countries? And why do we always do this? Blah, 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 blah. It's because of that. To whom much is given. Now, I gave the example about, taking out other people, whether you're picking up the bill for family or friends and stuff like that. There's a bunch of people who won't even do that. They don't care how much money they got. They want everybody else to pitch in. And that's why you don't understand the concept. And I think that's why we need to just reiterate that concept to one another. Another comment. The reality is the people who are in charge currently are looking to get richer. They do that they feel they must to eliminate any agency, programs, or laws that will stand in their way. They must eliminate anything that might challenge their efforts to get richer and to gain more. Absolutely. You break down all of the controls and all of the systems so that you can do what you want to do. But I think that what's important is that we recognize that, as a common person, we can't stop that. Can't stop what they're doing in Washington. Now, if we get together in force, we can stop what they're doing. But currently, right now, when no elections are going on, it's not a lot we can do to kind of stop what they're doing. But we should be able to recognize that. We should be able to communicate with one another that this isn't right. This isn't normal. This isn't the way that you should operate. You shouldn't be breaking stuff down, and all this is about money. Because unfortunately, what I keep constantly seeing is a group of young men who still think that some of these ideas are okay. Still think that everything should be run like a business. Still think that everything is about money. Still think that, people over there who are struggling in other countries or people over struggling in some other place, we don't need to be thinking about them, worrying about them, giving them anything. That's the problem, is that there's still people who believe that. There's still people in our community, still young people, especially young men, for some reason, that think that this is the way to operate. And that's how you know when there's a problem. When you have a administration and you have a bunch of people who are older, who are thinking like 20-year-olds. Clearly, when you're a 20-year-old male, fresh out of school, fresh out of high school, in college, sometimes you got some weird little thoughts. You think the world is easy and everything is so simple because you haven't really come up against a lot of adversity yet. And I understand it. I mean, the easiest way to call it is young and dumb. I remember I was young and dumb. I know this may not be a good reference, but there was a reference back in the Cosby Show where Theo Huxtable, if you remember the Cosby Show, if you're of a certain age, where Theo Huxtable had just graduated high school, he was in college, and he thought he knew everything. You go to college, you do a couple of courses, he thought he knew everything. And basically, Cliff Huxtable was basically telling them, "Hey, man, you're young and dumb." And so that's what it is. You come out and you think you know everything. That's okay. I get that. But when you have somebody who's 78, I think, in the White House, and you have a Marco Rubio, and you have all these other people, and they still have the same thoughts and ideas as a 20-year-old, that's a problem. It shows the lack of maturity there and the lack of maturity there when it comes to their thought. Our job is to break that chain, that we don't develop too many more 78-year-olds who still think like 21-year-olds. So these young men who agree with these ideas, help them to make sure that they develop like most of the rest of us, who, as they get older, they realize, hey, life is a little bit harder than I thought it was. Everything is not simple and cut and dry. Everything is not about money. Everything is not about business. It's about more than that. By the way, some said that those in charge don't know what they're doing. The reality is they know exactly what they're doing. I believe that to be true. I believe that to be true. They know exactly what they're doing. But what they're doing is destructive in order to make money and to line their pockets. And so as we sit back here and we have conversations about what's going on in the world, as we sit back here and we talk about what's going on in Washington, we sit back here and we talk about just life in general, I think the reminder has to be everything cannot run like a business. Business is for business only. Treat everything like what it is. If you have to say, let's do this like a business, then there's something definitely wrong. We shouldn't do this like a business unless we're running a business. Anything else, it makes zero sense. I hope that concept resonates, because I think that's the part that needs to resonate with all of the young people. We need to just remind them that business is the only thing that runs like a business. Stop trying to get money out of everything. Stop trying to get a return on investment out of everything. You got to understand that. I mean, if that was the case, why we wouldn't have churches. The churches do so much for people. We do so much for individuals, and we get no return, like tangible return. When we are out and helping out the community, we're not getting a tangible return, other than we're getting intangible returns. We're getting returns of goodwill, love. We're getting returns of this is our duty and our responsibility towards others. We're getting returns of people understanding and coming towards Christ. But we're not getting any money. You know, if you're looking at it in the sense of, oh, well, all right, we're going to do this, and then we might get some more offerings later on down the line. You put that business plan out there, it's gonna fail. Everybody's gonna be like, that's a bad business plan, because that's not why we do what we do. But if you don't understand that concept, and then again, if we're not teaching that concept to these young people, then they're never going to get that you don't do everything for a return. I mean, we've said it here before, and we'll say it here again. Even the drug dealers give out turkeys and things on Thanksgiving. Everybody can do things when they're going to get a return back. Yes, the drug dealers can give out turkeys on Thanksgiving to the people that they've been taking money from all year long, or been giving drugs to all year long. I can help out people if I know I'm getting a return. Everybody does that. The worst of us do that. But the best of us give because that's what we're supposed to do. The best of us help out because that is what God has told us to do. Or that's because that's not only does that what God told us to do, just as a human being, that's what you should do. We should help one another. As the people of God, we have the calling and responsibility to take care of God's creation, not just ourselves, not just our family, not just America, but all of creation. Stop claiming to be the people of God when we don't do the will of God. Absolutely. And so I sit here and I say, because I've heard a lot of people say a lot of different things. And if you talk to the wrong folk, they'll say, the problem is you got all these people, all these Christians in the White House, all these Christians in the government. That's not the problem. The problem is we don't have any Christians in the White House, and we have very few Christians in the government. Got a bunch of people who go and rock crosses around their neck and put some titles on their name. But we have very few Christians, followers of Christ, in the government and in the White House in the positions of power. And so I think that the main thing for me is when you see something, recognize it. it will be a shame that you have. Let's keep it plain. It will be a shame that you have a president that is absolutely racist, but you're not able to recognize it. If you can't recognize racism like that, then you won't be able to recognize racism at all. It's a shame that you see the Marco Rubio, Secretary of State, who's sitting back here and as a Hispanic man is going after Hispanic men and women and trying to violate their rights to get them kicked out of the country. Somebody who came from immigrants who's going to try to shut the door and trying to kick other people out. It's a shame that you see somebody who is racist against his own people and has self-hate, but you can't recognize it. It would be a shame for all of this to be in our face. The opportunity for us to see what truly bad characters look like, and we can't recognize it. One last thing, and just in reference to that, and then I'm letting it go. Two pivotal moments, and there's been more, but two pivotal moments that they talk about all the time when they're talking about civil rights and Black history. And one was Roots, and the other was Uncle Tom's Cabin. Now, with Uncle Tom's Cabin and Roots, and you can, for the younger people, that's the equivalent is George Floyd. But when you had Uncle Tom's Cabin, what they said was the people in the North read the book Uncle Tom's Cabin, which was a story about slavery. And what it did was it opened up people's eyes to the horrors of slavery. And so it said the country's, many people in the country's opinion about what was going on in the South. So people in the North who didn't know anything really about slavery, they knew a little bit. They opened up their eyes to the horrors of what was going on in the South. And it turned a tide on some of how people thought about slavery. And then again, when Roots came out, they said that there was a large contingent of people who saw Roots who had no idea how bad slavery was. How bad, not only what slavery was, but the lasting effects of slavery. And then as Roots went on through the continuing years, the discrimination and the hate that continued to go on. It opened up people's eyes. They were able to see it in a show. And before, and with Uncle Tom's Cabin, they were able to read it in a book, and their imaginations were able to open them up to what was going on. And then for younger people, George Floyd was the same thing, where people kind of, when you had the Black Lives Matter movement, where people kind of opened their eyes and were able to see some things. Well, it would be a terrible situation if what we're seeing now, we're seeing it live in the living color, what racism truly looks like from a power standpoint. We've seen it before, but for the younger population, you're seeing it live and in color, and you're not able to recognize it. It's not going to be one of those pivotal moments for some folk where it should be able to change them. When you see something like people saw Roots, when you see something like they were able to see the words in Uncle Tom's Cabin, you should be able to recognize the evil and then change your ways. But unfortunately, for a lot of the young men that are going on right now, and I keep going back to young men, is because that's what the reports, that's what the polling are saying, and that's some of the people that I actually come across. And they're not recognizing what's going on. They're not recognizing racism. They're not recognizing hate. They're not recognizing just, I don't care about others. They're not recognizing the lack of Christianity, and even more the lack of humanity that's going on. And so that's the problem. I put it in your face and you can't see it. And that's the scary part about where we are as a society. All right. That's it. I know that was, it is what it is. Again, if you take away anything from what we talked about here today and Impact, is let's just remind people anytime, if you're in a meeting, if you're in a group or whatever, and somebody says, let's handle this like a business. If it's not a business, that is a statement that doesn't need to be a part of it. And we need to constantly let people know and tell people that if it's not a business, let's stop trying to treat it like a business. If there's a situation where we need to treat this with love, respect, or if we need to treat this, if this is anything that has to do with a relationship to the church, let's treat it like what it is and stop chasing businesses. You want to start a business, but don't bring that up in here. All right. Well, that's it. Well, thanks for all the comments. Just want to remind again, Tuesdays, 7 o'clock, that's prayer. Thursdays at 7 o'clock, that is Thursday Weekly Bible Study. And Sundays, 10 o'clock, that is worship service. Join us, Facebook and YouTube for all the offerings and for worship as well. Facebook, YouTube, and in person if you are at the address on our screen. That's it. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for coming. Thank you for the comments. Please feel free to join us again.